Welcome back. Stray 50 Hz voltages in cow sheds are known to upset stock and reduce milk production. They've mostly been rectified. What's less well known is that in more modern installations, variable speed drives can also produce stray voltages. Sometimes their origin is difficult to detect, but once identified, easy to fix. Steve Corkill explains.
Stray voltage is actually a very broad term. It's probably a false term. It really means the effect on cows from voltage-related equipment, and it can be in many forms. It's the basic form is what we call neutral-related stray voltage, and that's where a voltage is at the switchboard, can't get back to the transformer, and goes via the steelwork and therefore by the cows back to the transformer. A cow is 15 times more sensitive at least than a human to stray voltage. And if the cow can feel the stray voltage, she will retain her milk. And when she retains milk, then you get the bugs working, and then up goes your somatic cell count, ultimately mastitis. The modern dairies, more and more, they've got good power supplies, they're bigger, they have their own transformers. It's taken away the neutral effect type stray voltages. And now we have this harmonic stray voltage as it comes from switch mode power supplies and variable speed drives. And this is a totally different type of stray voltage. So stray voltage is a very broad term.
Righto, Grant, I'll show you what I've found wrong.
The equipment to look for in relation to these harmonic voltages are any form of switch modes power supply, which could be your pulsator power supplies or any of the automated equipment power supplies. And they need to be well filtered, and then variable speed drives are the obvious one. They do it not only in their rectification of the voltage, but also when they're putting out the voltage to the variable speed motors.
We go around, and we get right around here, and we're finally back to where it should be, back at 61 millivolts. So it's quite easy to fix, and fairly cheap to do.
The issue would be in pretty much every shed to a degree. But it's a matter of whether it meets the tolerance point. There's a tolerance point where the cows are more sensitive to it, and if it's under the tolerance point, there's not really any issue. And the higher that you go with this stray voltage, this harmonic voltage, the greater the effect. With the two different types of stray voltage, with the neutral related one, the cow won't want to step across a particular point or won't want to touch 2 points because it's a potential difference point. So it's like putting your tongue on a 9-volt battery, she'll feel it across the point. With the harmonic one, it's more like when you slide out of a car and reach back and get a whack off the door handle. It's more of a electrostatic discharge. And remembering a cow's 15 times more sensitive than a human.
Hang on. It's a real shame, eh? You see a nice shed like this, and simple stuff, stuffing it up. And these yokers are having a hell of a fight with their cows. I'm the sales manager of Corkill Systems, so I run the sales side of things. Being a farmer, it's very helpful knowing cows and being able to diagnose problems. My first contact normally on a stray voltage shed is a phone call from the farmer that's got problems. Sometimes I can sort it out over the phone, or most times I can do that.
So it has to be related to the milk line?
Yep. This unit that I'm using is a scope meter, and it'll measure EMC voltage. It's a very fine unit. They're $10,000 a piece. We've actually got 3 in our company, and I think there's only another couple around in the country, so there's probably only 4 or 5 in New Zealand. Essential because it's an indicative reading of what's going on, and I can do it quickly, walk around the shed and pinpoint onto and see exactly where the EMC voltage is. Okay, we're in front of a variable speed drive that's running at the moment on a vacuum pump, and if I put my thumb on again here, you can see I'm actually picking up some of the frequency that's being emitted from the drive. So instead of reading at 60 millivolts, we're actually reading 58, but the width of the screen has gone up dramatically. So that's a sign of what's actually floating around in here. Now, if we go onto this drive, you can see it's right off the scale of my scope meter. So this is emitting a large amount of voltage, and I actually have to go up in the scale to 2 volts, and it still gives me a full screen at 2 volts. So I have to actually go to 5 volts, and it's on the motor as well, before we can get a decent reading. So this is affecting the cows right through the shed. Now this drive is a new drive, and it's most probably correctly filtered for the job. We don't know without pulling it apart to have a look. But what we're showing here is the installation hasn't been done correctly, and that's what's magnifying the voltage and affecting the cows. So what it's really showing, Steve, is the voltage from those drives is in the electrical system in the wiring.
We upgraded the whole cow shed and put a whole new plant in and everything. And up till then it had been fine, but we started noticing a couple of weeks after the new plant was in, milkings were getting slower, not faster, as they were right at the start. Gave them a ring and said, can you come up and test my shed, something's not right here. And put the meter on and she went off the scale. She said, there's your problem. So the drive unit was out that day, later on that afternoon. Told them to get it out and new one went in. And within a week things started settling down again. Cell count was first, come back just to average and just sat there.
Yeah, so that's a lot lower than you used to be, and it'll be a big difference to your cows. Go through the shed nicely now.
The key thing I think for farmers to watch out is to make sure that the equipment being supplied meets the regulations, insist on the conformity documents, make sure that the electrician installing is aware of the little things that need to be done that are special, especially regarding dairy sheds. And there is a new code of practice that will become available that lays it out very clearly, but all manufacturers or suppliers are obligated to supply all of those same instructions and always have been.
Steve was part of the group that drafted the new code of practice in the supply, installation and operation of variable speed drives. I'll be back after the break with Craig Davey, President of the New Zealand Biosecurity Institute, to talk about the increasingly important issue of internal biosecurity. Welcome back. My guest this week is Environmental Coordinator for Horizons Regional Council. He's also President of the New Zealand Biosecurity Institute. Craig Davey, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Rod. It's good to be here.
Now, Craig, the Institute has its annual conference coming up. What's on the agenda?
Okay, we're going to meet in Auckland this year. We get around the country every year. We have it in a different place. This year, the theme is Tomorrow's Pest Today. So Auckland's the northern gateway to New Zealand, so we have a lot of pests come into the country, but it's also about what's happening within our country. For biosecurity, it's not just the border, it's also preventing pests spreading and managing when they're here.
We do hear a lot about this concept, this internal biosecurity. Makes farmers a bit nervous, a bit worried that it means that we're letting our guard down, when it really counts at the border.
Yeah, the border is actually fantastic. Worldwide, we've got the best biosecurity system. Unfortunately, sometimes things get through. Some things we've never even heard about can present themselves as a pest in New Zealand, such as the likes of Didymo or other weeds, PSA. They somehow get through our border. So internally, we've got a huge potential risk or risks within New Zealand already from the plants and pests that are present here. So internal biosecurity is about managing those risks so that they don't impact on our biodiversity or also our productive capacity.
When you say managing risks, what do you mean?
Managing them means highlighting them so people are aware of what is present in their region or in neighbouring regions. It also means using legislation to prevent them spreading. So we have the Biosecurity Act in New Zealand currently under review. That is actually a fantastic piece of legislation. It gives powers to regulatory bodies to create restricted places, put movement control on the worst pests, the new incursions, so we have mechanisms to deal with them. But it also means dealing with the tried and true. The gorses, the ragworts, and some of those ones that are present, say, in Northland and not present in Lower North Island or in Southland yet. So we can hopefully put measures in place to prevent them spreading.
How good are we at that? I mean, gorse and ragwort, we've been at them for years. Things haven't really changed a great deal. We've got great at the external border. What sort of lessons do we need to learn about how to be better internally?
Learning to be better internally is all about managing the future risk. So, what's grown in our gardens, our homestead gardens on our farms, are they going to be potential risks to our productive capacity on farms or even in forests?
You've mentioned that we have world-class external biosecurity, world-class legislation wrapped around that. That's taken a while to develop. What do we need to do now to develop a world-class system inside the country?
Yeah, very good question. We need all New Zealanders to take biosecurity as their #1 priority. When they travel overseas, but when they travel within New Zealand as well, that they are aware of what pests can be shifted between and what pests are potentially going to impact on the thing that they enjoy. So your program shot a hornwort clip the other week about an aquarium plant that's completely changed our environment under the water. Stops people boating and swimming, and if that is spread by people, we're going to have hornwort invading the South Island and completely changing the aquatic environment down there.
And you're very big on farmers drawing what you call a 9-wire border fence around their own properties. What do they then do internally? Just hunker down and hope?
Well, no, biosecurity to me is a verb. So it's not the biosecurity system in isolation, it's an action, it's a doing thing. So to have a 9-wire boundary mentality for your farm or your forest or your orchard means to know what potential risks are to your property, what species, and what pathway, what mechanism of spread could impact your ability to produce or grow or even just have a nice lake or river. So it's identifying, is it the gravel, is it the hay, or is it machinery coming onto my property that could potentially spread a weed or a pest from another district, not just from overseas.
How easy is it for a new weed, for example, to establish itself here?
Okay, so there's actually a current situation now which you couldn't write it in fiction. So we've had chicken feed brought to the country, totally legit, passed all the import health standard. It's fed to chickens. The chickens have passed seed that was in that feed through into manure, which was used to produce a maize crop. The weed was able to grow in the maize crop. The maize was then harvested and sold as feed, and it was sold in time of drought, so it wasn't put into a stack directly, it was fed out quite quickly, so the seed remained viable. We've now got 6 farms in the Waikato that are presenting with this weed, and this weed is North America's worst weed, and it will limit the production of corn up to 70% if it gets to within a ratio of 1 plant per square metre. So it's a huge beast of a weed, potentially devastating for some of our maize production and other crops.
What you're really saying is aggressive containment. See it, act fast.
Exactly. The old saying, a stitch in time saves 9. Well, in biosecurity, a stitch in time saves millions of dollars. The figures put to pest control in New Zealand is huge. 1% of our GDP goes on managing internal pests in New Zealand. That's nearly $2 billion a year on pests that we don't need here. So we don't need any more.
Craig, Davey, thanks very much for joining us.
No problem.
Now, here's a look at what's on around the country over the coming week. An irrigation field day is being held at Peregrine Winery in Gibson Valley from 1:30 till 3:30 p.m. this Tuesday the 24th of May. On Thursday the 26th of May, the 2011 New Zealand New Hogget Presentation Dinner is being held at the Sedima Hotel in Christchurch. And if you need to find out about your carbon credit options, a 4-hour MAF forestry workshop is on at the Kingsgate Hotel in Oamaru this coming Friday the 27th of May. And that's it from us for now. Next week we return to Golden Bay, catch up on progress on cleaning up waterways in the Arere catchment. And we visit Robin and Lois Greer in Southland, who run both conventional and organic dairy operations, as well as processing their own milk to make cheese on site. And of course you can watch replays of today's program on TVNZ On Demand or on TVNZ7. Screening times are on tvnz.co.nz. We'll leave you with a look at what weather's likely to be crossing your region over the next few days. And we hope to see you all again next week.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.